Something's off in your marriage. You feel it before you can explain it. You're more tired than you should be. Sex feels like effort instead of instinct. Your patience is shorter. Your fuse is thinner. Your confidence is quieter than it used to be. And what makes it worse is this: you're still showing up. You go to work, you pay the bills, you handle responsibility. So when things feel flat at home, when desire drops, when erections are unreliable, when emotions are harder to keep in check, you assume the problem must be stress or age or the relationship itself. Maybe you tell yourself, this is just how it goes after 40. This is what long relationships turn into. This is normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. For many men, what looks like relationship problems is actually a biological problem hiding underneath. Low testosterone doesn't just affect sex. It affects how you handle pressure, how you respond emotionally, how much desire you feel for anything at all. And when those symptoms start running low, everything else feels harder than it should. The frustration builds. Arguments start over nothing. You pull back because it feels safer than failing again. Your wife notices. Even if she can't name it, she feels the distance. She feels the change. She feels the loss of presence. And the most dangerous part is that nobody talks about this. Doctors often dismiss it. Friends joke about it. Men internalize it. So you grind through it quietly while your marriage pays the price. This episode isn't about blame. It's not about excuses. And it's not about selling you on anything. It's about understanding a system that runs your body and what happens when that system drops below where it should be. We're going to talk about the real signs of low testosterone, how it affects sex, mood, and emotional control, what you could do about it naturally, how testing actually works, and where men go when they need help, including options doctors offer, options you can order yourself, and the risks men take when insurance refuses to play along. If your marriage feels different, if your body feels different, and you keep telling yourself, it's just life, stay with me, because ignoring this costs men far more than they realize.
We're going live, baby.
We'll do it live.
You're listening to the premier podcast for men who want to not only be better with women, but want to be better men in general. This is the Come On Man podcast. And here's your host,
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer. He is a certified master life coach and NLP practitioner.
It's true. It's damn true. It's Christmas week, fellas. Happy Monday. Hope you guys had a good weekend. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Paul Bauer. I help men level up and get better with women. And the funny thing about doing that is it tends to make us better men in all areas of our lives. So we'll get right into it today. And I want to talk about why testosterone matters in marriage and relationships, and even, if you're dating or whatever out there. But specifically in relationships, because it is Dead Bedroom Monday. But, our hormones affect lots of aspects of our life, right? Not just sex. They impact our moods. They impact how we show up, right? Men often mislabel the problem. They don't even realize that they might have a low T problem. A lot of guys don't even realize it. A lot of guys you would interact with, you would assume have high T, actually have low T. It's something that surprises a lot of guys when they actually go get tested for it. Now, there's this I've heard out there on the internet that testosterone levels have significantly decreased from, back when our my grandfather was out, a young, a young buck out there banging strange or whatever. You know what I mean? But it's funny. One of my Wolfpack brothers brought that up because he went and got TRT a couple of years ago. He's since went off of it though because he was having PSA problems. And then I guess he's got prostate cancer that runs in his family, so it's too risky for him. But he at one point was looking into it. His testosterone levels were low, and he went to go talk to his doctor about it. And he brought it up with an endocrinologist that he heard that T levels have been drastically dropping since whatever, and the doctor said that to him, he goes, I don't know how accurate that information is because we haven't been measuring testosterone levels. We didn't even start doing that until like the 70s or something like that. I don't know. It's what I heard. But a lot of guys that I do know that have went and got tested, they have been significantly below the quote unquote normal range, And so that does tell me that there is a problem out there. Now, the first time I ever heard about this being a problem, I actually, shout out to Rich Cooper, but in his first book, The Unplugged Alpha, talks about taking care of your endocrine system, making sure that your testosterone levels are optimized, and I was like, it was something that I never even thought of before. I just thought that sort of thing just took care of itself. You know what I mean? But one of the things that he talks about in there, and I had him on the podcast years ago to talk about this sort of thing, is just that we have a lot of stuff in our natural environment that's causing us to have decreased testosterone levels. We've got a lot of plastics that, we drink liquids out of, water bottles, sodas, and all that kind of stuff. And there's chemicals that they use to create the plastics that seep into what we're drinking, right? And then like the packaging for our food, all that kind of stuff seeps into the food. And so we're eating all this stuff that's, causing endocrine problems that are causing our T levels to drop. There's a lot of parabens and stuff in the soaps we use and the shampoos and the deodorants and all that kind of stuff. That's why there's a big push out there for more natural type soaps and stuff like that, like was it Dr. Squatch and Duke Cannon and all that kind of stuff. They're trying to decrease the amount of toxic parabens that that we're applying to ourselves so that we don't have these drops in testosterone. But it's a big thing, and it impacts it impacts your sex drive, your libido, it impacts your bodily functions like your erections. If you're tired all the time, and you just feel lethargic a lot, even if you try to go to the gym and try to work out, it's just a struggle because you just don't have the energy. A lot of times it's because you have low T levels, right? By the way, guys, I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So please like, subscribe, hit those notifications, would you? So your testosterone controls several different things in your body. You've got your physical drive and your stamina. That's impacted by your testosterone levels. Your sexual function is clearly impacted by testosterone levels. But a big thing that a lot of people don't realize is your emotional steadiness, right? A lot of people, there's this misconception that guys who get on testosterone, it's almost like people just assume testosterone is like steroids. You know what I mean? It's not. It's a natural produced hormone in your body, and you need to have a certain amount to have a certain amount of vitality in your life, right? And so, but that also controls your mood. And you'll find that guys who have no emotional control, they cry a lot, or maybe they don't cry, but they lash out and they get mad at the drop of a hat. If you check their testosterone levels, you might think, oh, these guys have high T because they're raging, right? Like they've got roid rage. No, they actually, most of those guys have low testosterone. So if that's you and your emotions are uncontrollable, you get mad easily, you want to punch walls all the time, you might actually have low testosterone. because you don't have the ability to control those emotions. And once you get on a regiment, where you either get on TRT, right, or you do what we're going to talk about a little bit later on how to boost it naturally. You boost your testosterone levels naturally, you actually can be a little more even keeled, a little more rational. You don't let things, bother you as badly. A lot of that is impacted by your testosterone levels. And there's some early warning signs, right? Like if you find yourself just, like I said before, constantly fatigued, right? If you're just, God, everything's just really hard to do, just the simplest tasks. You just want to lay around all day, that kind of stuff, right? You might have low testosterone levels. You might gain a lot of weight, without overeating. If you're gaining a lot of extra body fat and you're not really eating a lot more, it might be because your testosterone levels are too low. Because your testosterone levels actually help regulate your weight. A lot of guys who get on TRT, they find that the weight just starts dropping off, and things become easier, right? Like, who was it? I think I heard this from Rich Cooper first, but God, he quotes someone else, but he says testosterone makes hard things feel good. You know what I mean? So when you're trying to work out in the gym and your testosterone levels are optimal, like that extra hard work feels good. It doesn't feel like, it's so hard to do. But when your T levels are low, it's like, it's just a goddamn grind. You know what I mean? Like you just, God, I got to go to the gym today. Damn it. I just, and then when you go, you just half-ass everything. It's just because you just don't have that kind of stamina, right? And then also, you have slower recovery time, right? A lot of times, you go to work out, and typically, you work out one muscle group and then you give it a day to rest, and then like you recover pretty easily. But if you just, you do a workout and it just wrecks you for like 3 days, you might have low testosterone levels. Now, I'll tell you what, a couple years ago, I was doing the carnivore diet. I was trying out the carnivore diet. I had already been doing keto for a long time. I'm still a big fan of the ketogenic diet, but I was getting ready to do a Tough Mudder, right? I did a Tough Mudder a couple of years ago. And so I was training for that, and I wanted to drop a lot of weight. And that was also at a suggestion from Jack Napier. If you guys are still watch Rule Zero and stuff like that, Jack Napier, he's a physical trainer. And one of the things that he told me is, well, if you're going to be doing a bunch of body weight exercises for the competition itself, because we had to do like monkey bars and climb over obstacles and all that kind of stuff. He goes, it's a lot easier if your body weight weighs less, so you should drop weight. And so I was like, yeah, I'll drop weight. And I decided to try dropping weight using the carnivore diet. Well, going on carnivore for several months and dropping a significant amount of weight to go do Tough Mudder, I just found by the end of that whole training sequence and by the end of Tough Mudder, dude, I was gassed constantly. Everything seemed difficult. I was having problems with like low libido, which was crazy because Nurse Chick is a freak, you know what I mean? And I had all this low libido, and I was like, there's something off here. Let me go get my T levels checked. And so I worked with a company called Mail Excel. They send you a home kit where you prick your finger and you send blood labs in via mail, right? And so I mailed my blood labs back in, and sure enough, my T levels were below the normal range. And I was like, well, that explains why I feel like garbage all the time. You know what I mean? And so I ended up getting myself on a TRT regimen with that. Which we'll get into. I don't immediately recommend guys just go get on TRT though. Okay. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but let me ask you guys this. What goals, hold on. I didn't even update my question for the day. Do any of you guys feel lethargic all the time? Like you just feel like, God, it's really hard to get up in the morning. It's really hard to get off the couch. You just want to lay around all day. You're just feeling tired a lot. Let me know in the chat if that's something that you're feeling. You feel constantly tired and like, even just going for a walk sounds like a struggle, let me know in the chat, because you might actually have low T. That might be something you want to go get checked out. A lot of times too, when you have low testosterone, it impacts your brain function. That's why I said before, it impacts your moods and stuff like that, but also your cognitive functions start to decline, right? So you're having a hard time focusing on things. Like, you get distracted real easily. Like you'll go to do something and then you'll forget why you did something. Have you ever walked into a room and you're like, why did I walk into this room? You know what I mean? Like, that tends to happen to us after 40 and stuff like that, where you walk into a room and you're like, why the hell am I in here again? If that's you might have a lower testosterone, right? You're slower at decision making. Now, one of the things that I harp on guys in Get Her to Fuck You Again, I on the podcast all the time, and the Passive Dread Blueprint, all that kind of stuff. I harp on guys making decisions quickly, learning how to make decisions quickly, because successful men make decisions quickly and they change their mind rarely, if ever, right? That's something I learned from Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. But I also learned that when you're a decisive person, that those are attractive qualities in women. Like, women don't like making decisions, right? So I'm constantly harping on being a decisive guy. Like, go with your gut, pick things quickly, just, make decisions quickly, right? If you struggle with that and you're just like, you're him and haw about stuff, and you end up getting analysis paralysis because you just can't make a damn decision. A lot of that is also a symptom of low testosterone, slower decision making, and then just general mental fog. If you're just in a daze where you've got this foggy brain, a lot of that is because you have low testosterone. There's a lot of guys that once they get on TRT, or they work on boosting their testosterone levels naturally, that brain fog clears up and they're able to think quickly. They're able to make snap decisions. Everything's just firing on all cylinders. You know what I mean? There's a conspiracy here too. I don't have it in my notes, but there's this conspiracy that the government, or the powers that be, whoever they are, they don't want men to have high testosterone, especially guys after 40. Like, they want your testosterone levels to decline. That's one of the reasons why there's a theory out there that, the government's health standards, when it comes to testosterone, they had a normal range that was different back in the 70s or whatever, of this is the normal range. And they've since extended it, and said, no, now this is the lower range. Like, they moved it downwards, right? And that's why they say that our testosterone levels have been decreasing over the years. Well, a lot of the reasons why they, instead of addressing the root cause, they moved it downwards, is because they actually want men more docile. They don't want guys thinking clearly. They want weak men and stuff like that, because weak men can't fight back against, the powers that be and stuff like that. So they actually want your testosterone levels lower. And what's fascinating is once you get your testosterone levels optimized, like, think about this for a minute, okay? You get your testosterone levels optimized and you have all the knowledge and experience that you have now in your 40s or 50s, but then you have the testosterone levels that you had in your 20s. Like, you're unstoppable. You're basically a superhuman, because in your 20s, it's like, it was wasted on you. You were dumb. You were young and dumb. It was totally wasted on you. But now you have all these experiences, you have all this knowledge and all this kind of stuff. You have more, you add testosterone to that, you're an unstoppable human being. You know what I mean? And the government and the powers that be, they can't have that. They can't have that, right? Anyway, your desire and interests drop, right? When it comes to like, sex or whatever, you're less interested in sex when you have low testosterone. So now, like, if you're in I think this is a big problem too, where a lot of guys don't even realize that they're in a sexless marriage, is because their T levels have dropped so much too, that they're just not that horny anymore anyway. And they're just like, oh yeah, the wife only bangs me once a week, and yeah, that's fine. That's fine for me, right? But if you get your T levels checked, you'll find that you probably have low T. if that's you, where you just don't care about sex so much anymore, you probably have low T because you have less interest in sex. I had this neighbor a couple of years ago at my last house, and he was a total MGTOW guy. He was a retired postal employee, and he bought this fixer-upper house next door to mine, and that's just what he spends his days doing, fixing up this house. But he didn't realize like how big of a project it really was. And anyway, he and I would chat every once in a while, and that's one of the things that he talked about was how grateful he is that in his older age he's got lower testosterone levels and that he's less interested in sex, because then he's like, yeah, I'm just totally I'm not even interested in chasing tail anymore. And like, that's a blessing because like women are a waste of time. And it's super funny to meet a MGTOW guy in real life like that, but he was a one of those guys that wasn't on the internet bitching about women. Like, he was out living his best life alone and he loved it. Right. Like that's those kind of MGTOW guys I can respect. Like guys who are like, I'm going MGTOW, screw women, but then they just spend all their time bitching about women. I have zero respect for those guys. But those guys might also have low testosterone because they have less interest in sex, right? They don't initiate sex that much. They have less urgency to do it. You know what I mean? And so the way this impacts your marriage is if your wife, still wants to have sex and you're not initiating anymore, all this stuff, now she's in a dead bedroom situation. You know what I mean? When I was, I used to spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year, I would spend a lot of time in dead bedroom forums, and that was an interesting experience. I would just go in there and try to drop, free value and free advice in there and maybe answer people's questions and stuff like that. But there was a ton of women in these groups. There was a ton of women that were in there complaining about dead bedroom situation. Now, like most of these women looked like you would expect, you know what I mean? Like they were fat, they were old, they were overweight, like they were just unattractive. You know what I mean? It's like, lady, if you would just lose some weight, your husband would probably find you more attractive and probably want to bang you more. But like, why would he want to bang an ogre? And you tell women that kind of stuff and they have no sense of accountability. And so they're like, well, my husband's no spring chicken either. And whatever, instead of going, yeah, maybe you're onto something there. Maybe I should look inward and fix something. Right. But also, a lot of those women that were still attractive, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's either a situation here where she's an insufferable nag or he's got low testosterone. Like those are the only possible explanations I can come up with, because she's still like an attractive woman. You know what I mean? So if that's you, if you're a married guy and you just like have zero interest in initiating sex, you might actually have low testosterone, which might actually be impacting other areas of your life. Right. And then, when it comes to sex, low testosterone causes oftentimes erectile dysfunction problems. You have difficulty getting hard. You have difficulty staying hard. Right. And even if it is hard, it's a weaker firmness. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like cutting, as Nurse Chick calls it, cutting diamonds. You're not knocking, lamps off the nightstand anymore with that thing. If that's a problem, a lot of guys think, oh, well, I just need to go get some Blue Chew, right? Or I need to go get some Viagra or something like that. Like sometimes go get your T levels checked. It might not be a blood flow problem at all. It might be that you have a low testosterone problem. And by the way, guys, if you are having intimacy problems and it might not be testosterone, it might just be how you're showing up in the relationship. I recommend, hold on. Which one's this one? Do I have it here? I don't even have it here. I recommend getting my book, Get Her to Fuck You Again. You can get that on Amazon or on Audible. Okay. Normally I'd play a commercial for it, but it doesn't look like I've uploaded a commercial for that. Probably for the best. You're like, we don't want to watch commercials. We're getting plenty of commercials as it is from YouTube. Fair enough. All right. You have a lower ability to handle stress when you have when you're having low testosterone. If you are constantly feeling overwhelmed by stress, and you have a lower tolerance for pressure, and you're just like, you just feel like the world's caving in on you a lot, it might be because you have a low testosterone problem, because that goes to like your ability to think clearly and to handle your emotions and all that kind of stuff. Well, stress really tests your ability to handle your emotions. And if you just can't handle it and you want to snap at everybody all the time because you have a lower tolerance for pressure, that's a sign, right? If you are constantly feel overwhelmed or mental overload, that's a sign. And then if you just want to constantly withdraw, right? I saw this video the other day, which is so sad, man. It's so sad, where this woman's walking through the house and she goes, I don't understand. I have this beautiful house. It's a great big house, and we have lots of room and space and all this kind of stuff. She goes, but she opens the garage door and the husband's in the garage watching TV by himself. And she's like, but my husband's out here in the garage watching TV. Like, why is that, right? And of course, all the guys in the comments are like, well, who's going to tell her? Like, he just doesn't want to be around you. He just doesn't like you, doesn't want to be around you. He wants to be alone, all that kind of stuff. And that a lot of guys think that's normal, right? They have a man cave that they retreat to because they want to withdraw, right? They want to be by themselves. They want to have their solitude and stuff like that. And yeah, sure, she might be an insufferable bitch, and she's probably made the whole house all about her, and she's annoying to be around. And so he's like, I just gotta fucking get away. You know what I mean? But if that's you, if you're constantly feeling like you have to get away and be alone or whatever, you might have low testosterone. It might be an issue with testosterone, right? But side tangent here, don't have a man cave. Okay. Especially if you're the one that's the primary breadwinner and you're the one that's paying for the mortgage and all that kind of shit, your house is your man cave. Okay. Make your wife a fucking she shed where you send her away. All right. Your house is your castles. Stop giving your castle away to the queen that, she doesn't deserve that shit where you just get your own little fucking room. Don't be like that. Okay, guys. Mood problems, right? We have irritability, emotional flatness, reduced patience, all that kind of stuff. These are all symptoms of low testosterone. If you have low confidence in yourself, right? A big thing that we try to talk about on the podcast is how you got to be more confident. Confidence to, like, when a confident man to a woman gives her the same buzz that a great pair of tits gives to a man, right? Women are just wired to find confidence attractive, and a lot of guys really lack a lot of confidence, or they've been in relationships a long time and they've handed the reins over to their wife, and now they have zero confidence in themselves to set the tone and lead a relationship. And that, a lot of that's, part of the betaization process. But because of that, like, they end up in dead bedroom situations because they're just not confident enough to, stand up to their wives and tell them no and enforce boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of that too is because, you've been in this relationship for a long time. There's studies that show that guys who, once they're cohabitating with a woman, oftentimes their T levels drop. You know what I mean? So a lot of that, is a compound issue. But then once your T levels go down, it makes it even worse. And now you have reduced confidence, right? And you start second guessing yourself. Any kind of challenges you want to avoid, any kind of obstacles, anything that might make you a little bit stronger. You're like, that sounds too difficult. Like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And then you just also don't trust your own decisions, right? So you're constantly, asking other people's opinions. Should I do this? Should I do that? I don't, you know what I mean? Instead of just coming up with your own decisions and just going with it, right? A lot of that is just because of a lack of confidence, and that lack of confidence sometimes is a symptom of having low testosterone. By the way, guys, if you get value out of any of these episodes, do consider sending a super chat. That helps support the show probably more than anything else. Now, having low testosterone, if you don't do anything about it, it has relationship impacts over time. You have lower connection. A lot of that too is just because you can't handle shit tests. You can't handle arguments well. You get mad at the drop of a hat, all that kind of stuff. And, you want to withdraw and you want to be by yourself, and all that kind of stuff causes a less connection. That creates more tension in the relationship because your wife's trying to fix things, and the only way she knows how to fix it is by nagging you more. And then that causes more problems, and you don't know how to handle it because you've got low testosterone issues. And then there's, and when you got low testosterone, you start acting more like a woman, which causes you to have a loss of polarity in the relationship because now you have two women in the relationship, right? So all that kind of stuff impacts relationships over time. Now, some of that stuff is just because we're a little bit older, and some of it's also because of our lifestyle, what we choose to do, right? So naturally, your testosterone levels will decrease with age, and that's why, which is fascinating. When I first started getting on TRT, and I was working with the nurse practitioner for it, she was saying, we were talking about the range, right? Which is like, I don't know, the range, your total testosterone level needs to be between 300 and 1,000, whatever the units are there, right? And so she'll say, yeah, if you go to your typical family doctor, a lot of those guys, if you get tested, you go get your blood test done, and it's within that range, they'll go, oh, you're within the normal range, you're fine, right? But sometimes guys are like down at around 350. You know what I mean? And when I first got on this stuff, I was I 40 already? I might have been like, yeah, I think I was over 40 already. But she was saying how, she goes, yeah, 350 is in the normal range, but it's more normal for like an 80-year-old man. Like an 80-year-old man is going to be, his testosterone is probably going to be between, 300 and 500. Like that would be normal for an elderly man. She goes, a guy your age that's not normal. It's absolutely not normal. We want to get you closer to 1,000, because that's where you would have been. That's optimal. And that's where you would have been like, in your late teens, early 20s, and she's like, that's where we want to get you to be. Right. But if you didn't have any of that kind of stuff, you didn't have TRT, naturally over time, even without the parabens and all this, that stuff, your T levels would decrease over time. It's just natural, but your lifestyle speeds it up, right? So if you're smoking a lot, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, if you're overweight, and 75% of dudes out there are overweight or obese, right? If that's you, you're using a lot of chemicals and all that kind of stuff. If you're drinking a lot, if you're smoking, anything that's bad for you, all that kind of stuff speeds it up, and a lot of guys, their lifestyle is so terrible that their T levels crash in their 20s. There's guys out there that have low T in their 20s, and it's a damn shame, but a lot of them is because of obesity problems and their lifestyle, you know what I mean? And too much partying. They also sleep also is an important factor here, right? So if you aren't sleeping enough, I had an executive officer in the Navy used to tell me, he's like, 4 hours will keep you alive, Bauer. 4 hours of sleep. That's all you need. 4 hours. I'll tell you what, if you go for years only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, like that's going to impact your endocrine system. It just is, right? So short sleep lowers your levels. Poor quality sleep will lower your levels. So if you're, constantly getting up in the middle of the night, for various reasons, like it's going to lower your testosterone levels. So a good natural way to restore your T levels is to make sure you get plenty of sleep, right? Which sometimes you just got to force yourself to do it. I'll tell you what, one thing I did for years, I was always a night owl. I would identify as a night owl. If you ask me, I'm like, oh, I'm a total night owl. And I would always be up till like 1 or 2 in the morning. And that was normal for me. And then I would, but I would also try to sleep in, especially on the weekends. I'd sleep in until like 9 or 10 o'clock and just completely waste the day. I did that for a long time, And then it was last year where the business coach I was working with at the time was challenging us to get 10 things done for the business before 10 a.m. And I was like, damn, I don't even wake up until 10 a.m. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Right. So I was like, all right, fine. He's my coach. I'm going to do what my coach tells me to do. And I started making sure that I got up, I was trying to get up at like 5 a.m. And so I started doing that. And what I found was I'm getting way more sleep now that I get up earlier because I'm tired now and I go to bed at like 9. And the thing is that I'm still up basically the same amount of hours per day, but I'm getting way more done because in the morning I want to knock out a whole bunch of stuff for work. And so I get all this stuff done and I'm typically done with all my work stuff by like noon. And then I have like the whole, rest of the afternoon to go work out, go for walks, go run errands, like whatever I need to do. And then I have the evenings to myself to relax. And so by the time I go to bed at like 9, I'm actually getting more sleep and I'm getting way more stuff done. It's just, it's fascinating. Now, like a guy could literally get up crazy late in the morning, like 10 or 11 and stay up late and still get as much done if he wants to. But most of us don't. Most of us, by the time the evening rolls around, we want to relax, right? So we don't get anything done in the evening. And so all that stuff is just wasted time. Something to think about. But yeah, I'm actually getting more sleep now that I get up earlier. It's pretty fascinating. All right. By the way, guys, I would love to get you guys in my wolf pack, wolf.comeonmanpod.com. This is some of the stuff that we talk about. We've got guys in there, like brother Dar. I don't know if he's in the chat right now. Oh yeah, he's totally in the chat. Dar Fitness is in the chat there. He's he's a fitness coach. He's there to help us out with stuff like this. We have conversations like this all the time, and we have a fitness accountability group in there where we talk about this sort of thing. So if you have questions about this, you can talk with other guys that know what they're talking about, because we're all, a lot of us are on TRT and we do take our testosterone level seriously. And there's guys in there that are doing it naturally. So there's lots of different options for you. And if you want to swap notes with other guys that know this stuff, it's time to run with the wolves, brother.
Beer club? Not anymore.
Fix what's broken. You lead like a man again. No pity, no therapy. Just fire, just frame. Cold bed, broken home, midlife drift, feeling alone. You don't need hacks, blogs, lies. You need men with fire in their eyes. We rebuild from the ground up. No excuses, no soft stuff. Telegram lit 24/7. Brothers locked in, still not ever. Step inside the pack. We don't fall, we attack. Truth, fire, presence, we bring it back. Masculine pride, no time to slack. Step inside the pack. Drop your past, claim your track. No therapy talk, no playing small. We sharpen blades, we take it all.
All right. Yes, getting Wolfpack, guys. Go to wolf.comeonmanpod.com. All right. Erkin's in the house. What's up, brother? Dar Fitness sent a $5 super chat. He says, most T levels are low because men don't sleep and eat well. Those don't fix everything, but they are low-hanging fruit. Magnesium, zinc, vitamin D are also big. No spoilers, man. I'm gonna get to that shit. I'm gonna give him this one here.
Respect the cock and tame the cunt.
That's right. That's what we do. That's what we do on this channel with high testosterone. And then he also says, guys, beat the drum. He's talking about ring the old rag. He talks about rub one out. You can't. Guys, beat the drum too often too. I speculate that the ease of access to internet corn is part of the problem. Looking forward to hearing your take on this. Yeah, that might be it too. A big problem with internet corn, especially when it comes to dead bedroom situations and stuff like that too, is that one, it desensitizes men, so guys get this, they're with their wife, and their wife, probably doesn't look like some of the corn stars out there. And so they start getting this imagined thing in their head that they are able to sleep with hotter women than they actually can get. And then they have a real woman right there who doesn't live up to that expectation. And so she's just now not she can't ever live up to what's going on with the corn. And then us as men, we're also polygamous by nature, and our minds can't tell what's real or what's imagined, right? And so if you've got 50 tabs open with any kind of woman you want, it naturally satisfies that urge to be with unlimited options, and your brain thinks that it's able to do this. And yeah, it causes lots of problems, man. Yeah, if that's you, if your wife just isn't getting you up anymore, it might be a low T problem. It also might be a corn problem. You might want to cut that shit out. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's something to that for sure. Let's see here. Kamal says a lot of people are proud of sleeping less, which is driven by the hustler mindset. It has a negative impact on their T levels. Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I'm not getting everybody here. Guys, send super chats if you really want to get your take on here, or if you have a question. All right. All right. Let's see here. Where are we at? We got to hide this. There we go. All right. Now, let's say you do work out though, right? Like you're not just a bump on the log. You're not just eating like shit, and you're not just, sleeping all day and playing video games and letting your T levels naturally drop. Like sometimes guys are active people, you know what I mean? Like they're active, but that still causes a decline in testosterone. So if you are like runners, you see this a lot in runners, guys that like they don't lift any weights, they only run. Those guys oftentimes have lower testosterone because they do excess endurance training, and that often will have a impact on your testosterone levels. Now, I was a runner up until this year. I had to retire from running because I fucked up my meniscus, and it's just not the same now, and I can't run on it anymore. And I don't want to push things. My doctor said that if I keep running, like he said, I can run, right? He's like, yeah, you could run right now. But he goes, with this type of surgery, you're going to have arthritis in that knee. You're going to. It's good. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 20 years from now, but you're going to have arthritis in that knee. And I'm just like, it's just uncomfortable to run on it. And so I'm like, why speed up the process? I think I'll retire from running, and I'll do, I'll do elliptical, I'll do exercise bike, I'll do actual biking, but I'll get rid of running. But for a long time, as a runner in the red pill space, and in the red pill space, it's all about, lift heavy 5x5, bro. And if you're not lifting, you ain't shit, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, a lot of people didn't like that I was a runner, for whatever reason. And a lot of them, their main argument was that excessive running, lowers testosterone, so there's something to that. So if you're a runner and you have no resistance training, and you're also not giving yourself a chance to recover, like all that kind of stuff can impact your testosterone, which kind of goes back to sleep, right? But even if you are resistance training, you need to give your body a chance to recover. Now, I'll tell you what, one thing that I learned, I learned in the military, when it comes to muscle recovery, a lot of the bigger built dudes on the ship, they would work out 7 days a week, right? But they would work a different muscle group every Monday through Sunday. So that way they're basically working, arms on Monday, but then they have 6 days for that muscle to recover. You know what I mean? So you can still work out every day when it comes to resistance training, as long as you're working out different muscle groups, right? But if you're going to do like a full body workout, don't do that daily. You need to give yourself time to recover. So you need to have a rest day in between, you know what I mean? So there's different ways of doing it, but you've got to let those muscle groups recover. And if you don't, if you're just constantly hitting the same muscles, the muscle's never getting a chance to grow back up. It's just, you're just because the way muscles grow is you destroy them, right? You break down the tissue and then it grows back stronger. That's how it works. But if you don't ever give it a chance to grow back, you're just constantly destroying it. It's not that good. You know what I mean? So all that kind of stuff impacts your T levels. Nutrition mistakes. So I already talked about that a little bit, right? We got guys who are overweight and obese. If you have low protein intake, right? Like this, you see this a lot with like vegans and vegetarians, right? Because they just aren't getting enough protein from the vegetables. And even if they eat stuff like soy to try to get protein, it's not a complete protein. It's still missing certain things. And so a lot of those guys, the vegans and vegetarians, they have low testosterone levels because they're not getting enough protein in their diets. A lot of guys are trying to avoid fat, right? Back in the was it 70s and 80s, with the food pyramid and all that stuff, they're like fat was bad, right? So they started taking fat out of everything and replacing it with sugar. A lot of that has caused our obesity problems. You actually need fat and cholesterol to produce testosterone. So if you are eating like high protein, low fat all the time, you're not giving your body the natural resources to produce the chemicals to make the testosterone. And then ultra processed food, right? If you're eating a lot of shit that comes in a box or in a can, you know what I mean? Like that's bad for you. It's not helping your testosterone. An easy way to just, without having to overthink dieting, because all diets work if you work them, by the way. All diets work if you're consistent and if you work them. But one of the easiest ways to just eat better is to stay on the outskirts of the supermarket. Don't eat any of the shit in the middle of the supermarket in the aisles, because almost all that stuff is processed bullshit. But on the outside is where you get your meats and vegetables and stuff like that, right? Stick with that kind of stuff, the natural whole foods, and most of the time you'll be okay. Stress and cortisol, right? So if you're chronically stressed, that raises cortisol levels. Cortisol levels end up blocking testosterone. Right. And so work and stress from home, that it becomes a compound issue because it's creating stress on both fronts. Right. Especially if you're in like a dead bedroom, right? Dead bedroom, you're constantly fighting with your wife. So, you're going to deal with work bullshit all day. And then you're going to come home and you deal with your wife's bullshit. That kind of stuff creates a lot of stress for a guy. And all that stress causes cortisol levels to go up and your testosterone levels go down. And when you have high cortisol levels, you start really developing this spare tire right here. You know what I mean? So all that kind of stuff adds to the problem. By the way, guys, follow me on social media. The links are in the description. I'm on all the good platforms again, including X. I'm at Best Men's Pod on X now. So come follow me on my new account there. So let's talk about how to optimize naturally first, because once you get on TRT, you're pretty much stuck with it. Now, some guys will get on TRT and if you're a young guy, I really would recommend you not get on it if you could absolutely avoid it. If you're like in your 20s or 30s and you haven't had kids yet, I would recommend that you try your hardest to try to do this as naturally as possible, okay? Because you might want to have kids someday, and getting on TRT, it causes problems with that. In fact, if a lot of times your doctor, if you're on TRT and you're trying to have a baby, they'll recommend you get off TRT, and they give you, I don't know. I can't remember the name of the drug. If one of you guys know this, let me know in the chat. It starts with a C. It starts like clo something. Anyway, they'll give you a drug that's supposed to basically jumpstart your testicles again to start reproducing testosterone naturally, right? So I heard that for a while there, like John Cena was getting off of gear and testosterone and stuff like that because he was trying to have a baby. But now I think he's done with it and he wants to just get on gear or whatever. But I saw a thing saying he just wants to enjoy life and not have kids, right? Clomid, yes, thank you very much, Pete. Yes, Clomid helps you jumpstart your testicles again. And so allegedly you can get off TRT and start producing it naturally. But the thing is, when I was talking to Rich Cooper about this years ago, because in his book he says you basically are stuck with it. You once you get on it, you don't get off of it. He was saying that even if you get off of it and you get on Clomid and you start trying to take supplements or whatever to boost it naturally, he goes, you probably will never get it optimal, never, on your own, especially after you've been on TRT for a long time. He's like, your body just won't get up to that level. So something to think about. So this is why I say, like, if you can avoid getting on TRT, I would try to do it naturally first. Okay. So some ways you can do this is lift heavy, right? Like go and start lifting heavier weights. So if you've been a runner for a long time and you want to try to boost testosterone, back off the running a little bit and lift heavy, right? And compound exercises are supposed to be better, right? Like deadlifts and shit like that. That's supposed to help with that. Fix your sleep problems. Okay. So start getting 8 hours of sleep if you can, right? And most people can, they just choose not to. So start changing your schedule up so that you can start getting more sleep and try to reduce your stress inputs if possible. Now, some of you guys, the career you're in, you'll have to change fucking careers to reduce that stress. Like, for instance, I'm only 25 years old and I've worked in IT for 20 years. All this gray hair is just from working in the IT business. I like to joke, but seriously though, a lot of people don't realize how stressful IT can be. IT, especially if you're the head of IT for a company, which I was for a number of years. I was the senior director of IT infrastructure, and the whole entire company is resting on your back. And if you've got your major, your company's major money earner platforms down because of a hardware issue, website went down, a DDoS attack, like anything like that, all eyes are on you. Like the entire board of investors is looking at you to fix the problem, and everyone's constantly asking for updates, all this kind of shit, and you're still trying to figure out the problem. Like, that is stress, man. That is a stressful thing. And so one of the things, like, I'm grateful for is being able to do this full time and retiring from that shit, because this is way less stress, man. Doing a podcast 3 days a week is fun for me, man. I love doing this stuff. This is not stressful at all, So, like, if you can do that, great. But a lot of you guys are in careers. You can't just drop that stuff and change careers just because of the stress level. So there's other things you have to do to cope with that stuff, right? Like, you got to take more breaks at work, go for a walk at lunchtime, like listen to calm music and stuff, like in your car or whatever, like whatever you can do, reduce your stress inputs as much as possible. That will help optimize naturally. Now, Dar Fitness in his super chat talked about some supplements worth considering, right? So vitamin D actually has been shown to boost testosterone levels. Now, you got to be careful with vitamin D because you can overdo vitamin D. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means your body will store it in the body. And if you have too much of it, you can actually get vitamin D poisoning and die, right? So one thing that you need to try to make sure you're doing, especially if you're upping your vitamin D dosage. Now, and by the way, guys, none of this is medical advice. Do your own research and consult a doctor, okay? Because I don't want to get sued here for giving out medical information. This is just, stuff that I've tried myself and whatever. But it's not medical advice officially. Okay. But vitamin D, one thing I will do is I take 50,000 IUs of vitamin D weekly, but it also comes with K2. So you have to get a vitamin D supplement that also has K2, because that offsets the high dosage and it causes it to not build up in your body as bad. And you're less likely to get vitamin D poisoning if you have K2 with it, right? And a lot of vitamin D comes with K2 automatically now just because of that. But there was a video a bodybuilder put out, I want to say 2 years ago now. And I did a podcast episode on this already, but he put out a video where he was on gear, right? Because he was a professional bodybuilder for all of his 20s, and in his 30s he got off all the gear and just had just a major crash, right? Hormone crash. His body wasn't producing it anymore, and he was just having all these medical problems because of getting off of gear. And so he was like, I'm trying to boost my testosterone naturally using higher doses of vitamin D. And so he started doing that. He was taking like, I don't know how many, I think he was taking something like 20,000 IUs a day, which is a ridiculous amount. I definitely don't recommend doing that, but this is what he was doing. And then he was regularly getting his blood work done to make sure that his D levels weren't, at a toxic level, but he was able to increase his testosterone naturally to like around 900, I think, or, so on the scale of 300 to 1,000, he was around 900, boosting it with vitamin D alone. So that's possible. There's also other YouTube videos out there you could find. There's a really good chiropractic doctor who does a lot of coaching when it comes to ketogenic diets and, low carb type diets, who recommends increasing your vitamin D levels to boost testosterone as well. Now, zinc and magnesium are also important when boosting testosterone. And if you have low zinc and low magnesium, that can actually cause your T levels to plummet, which is one of the things that I noticed when I was on the carnivore diet and my T levels plummeted when I was training for Tough Mudder. I got on carnivore, but the problem with meat and eggs only, and that's pretty much what carnivore is, right? It's like you can only eat natural animal products that animals make themselves. It's like cheese. You're not supposed to have cheese on carnivore because that's still a processed thing that humans make, even though it comes from cows. You're still not supposed to eat that, right? So you're only supposed to be eating shit like meat and eggs, basically. And so I was eating nothing but meat and eggs, and when you do that, you actually aren't getting a lot of the essential minerals that your bodies need. And so I had a lack of magnesium from that. And that was one of the reasons why my T levels dropped so much on the carnivore diet. So if you're going to be doing a diet like that, make sure you're supplementing zinc and magnesium so you don't have that crash, right? Maca is something that's supposed to help boost testosterone. If you ever get like natural testosterone booster supplements, a lot of those supplements have these ingredients in them. They usually have zinc, magnesium, they have maca, horny goatweed's another one, right? And ashwagandha is another one, right? What is this? The other one is it boron? Boron? Something like that is another one too. But if you there's lots of different natural testosterone booster supplements. If you look at the labels, they're not all the same, but a lot of them are very similar. And a lot of them have, zinc, magnesium, maca, horny goatweed, ashwagandha, all that kind of stuff. They have a lot of vitamin B shit in there too. Let's see here. Oh, Erkin says lack of magnesium also leads to cramps. Yeah. So you just it's good to have this stuff, and some of this stuff too, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, you'll find that in a daily multivitamin, you know what I mean? So if you just take your daily multivitamin for some of this stuff, you'll more likely going to be okay. By the way, guys, if you are in a dead bedroom situation, you might want to consider adding some passive dread. She used to watch you, hang on your words, crave your presence. Now, she barely notices when you enter the room. And if she does, it's with eyes full of boredom. You've tried being softer. You've tried being sweeter. You've tried everything they said would work. And still nothing. The truth no one wants to say out loud, she doesn't miss you because there's nothing to miss. But what if you can make her feel the fear of losing you without saying a word? This isn't manipulation. It's psychological contrast. It's healthy anxiety. It's passive dread. Rebuild tension, reignite her curiosity, make her jealous of the life you're living without her at the center. You don't chase desire. You become the man it fears losing. Visit dread.fixdeadbedrooms.com now and take the course. Don't wait for her to act different. Take action for yourself. Indeed. So before you go out and start taking a bunch of vitamins and go and ask your doctor to get on TRT, you're going to want to get tested, right? You're going to want to make sure that you definitely have an issue, right? And so the only really way to do that is to do a blood test. Now they do have, you can go on Amazon and they have saliva tests where you can, order it, spit in a tube and mail it off. That'll test your free testosterone levels. Typically they do have ones where you can prick your finger and, mail that in. You can do that too. One thing that I do typically, and we'll get into it here a little bit more, is like you can order your own blood tests. One of the brothers from Wolfpack a couple of years ago recommended going to a company called Direct Labs, where you can just order your own blood tests, and you go down to a Quest Diagnostic Center, usually at a Safeway or a Vons or something like that, and they have a Quest Diagnostic Center in the back by the pharmacy. They'll take your blood back there, and it costs like, I don't know, for a just a testosterone panel test, it's like $90, right? It's like out of pocket. It's not that bad, but go do that. But I mean, just go to your primary care physician and just say, hey, I've got all these symptoms. I'm a little worried about testosterone. Like, can I get a blood test? And a lot of your doctors will do that. Now, a lot of doctors don't want to mess with TRT. A lot of them think, like my doctor, for instance, is a total hippie. He looks like he's low T, you know what I mean? Like he is skinnier and shit. He sits cross-legged like a little bitch. And he and I argue all the time. And he is one of those guys that he literally thinks that TRT is basically steroids. And he's like, oh, why are you on TRT? Lyle Alzado died of cancer because of steroids. And I was like, it's fucking TRT. It's not, I'm not on, something like, Trend or some shit, I mean, it's what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you are a doctor, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of doctors that don't like prescribing TRT, so they won't help you, right? Or they might refer you to an endocrinologist, you know what I mean? Like, maybe, but a lot of them are just very anti-TRT. They're very liberal, and so they won't help you at all. But try that at least first and get a blood test done before you go and try to do any of the stuff, right? You might actually find out that it's not even a testosterone problem. You might actually have normal levels. And when I say normal levels, you might be higher in the range, right? So like, for instance, my dad was having brain fog and all this kind of stuff. And so his doctor was like, oh, well, let's check your T levels. My dad's pushing 80, and my dad got his T levels checked, and my dad was like in the 700s, right? And which is pretty high for an 80-year-old man. And so I was like, yeah, you don't need to get on TRT or anything, right? So sometimes your symptoms lie, blood work doesn't, okay? So you got to understand where you're at on the range, okay? So actually get it tested so you know for sure. So you're not just fucking guessing here and fucking around with stuff, right? Because I mean, a lot of guys will do that shit, right? They'll hear about this stuff on a Red Pill show and go, oh, I'm just gonna go buy it from the guy down the street, and they get on TRT, and they don't need to be on TRT, and it might fuck something up, right? So go get a blood test done before you even try doing any of this stuff, okay? But go see your primary care physician. If he won't help you, ask to be referred to a specialist, okay? That's an option. Like I said before, you can go to directlabs.com. They're not sponsoring the show or anything. I don't get any money from them. It's just I happen to use them, and they're very affordable. And you can order like literally a full panel with them. And it's like, out of pocket, the more stuff you're testing for, the more it costs, right? So every once in a while, I'll order a full panel and find out where my vitamin D levels are and all that kind of stuff, just to get an idea. But if you just want to get an idea of where your T levels are, they're basic, testosterone and free testosterone panel. And get your estrogen checked too. Especially if you get on TRT, because if you have too much testosterone, your body will cannibalize that and start turning that into estrogen. That's why a lot of guys, when they're bodybuilders and they're on too much gas, right, they start developing bitch tits, is It's because their body's turning that shit into estrogen. So then they got to get on estrogen blockers and all that kind of stuff. It's like, if you aren't trying to be a bodybuilder and you just want to be optimal, you probably don't need to necessarily have an estrogen blocker that goes with all that kind of stuff. But it's good to get that tested too, right? Find out, make sure that your estrogen's not too high and that your testosterone's still within the range, but more on the optimal side. You can do that kind of stuff and order that yourself with direct labs. There's also online clinics. Like I said before, I went with a company called Male Excel, right? They're not sponsoring the show either, but HIMS is available now. There's a whole bunch of other online ones. They will usually either send you down to a Quest diagnostic center, or they'll mail you a home kit and they'll have you tested. And the only problem I have though with Male Excel was that once they do that initial blood test, they're not trying to do blood tests to see where you're at. They just send you a questionnaire every couple months, and then it's all based on how do you feel? How do you feel? Well, I'll tell you what, like, I was feeling great. I was feeling awesome. But then when I'm getting to this next thing here, I ended up going black market, right? And I went and got my blood tested, because if I'm going to do it black market, I want to make sure that I'm not just, I'm making sure that I'm staying within this range and I'm not going too high or too low and stuff. And so I have to sort of take care of this myself with direct labs. And I found my testosterone levels were crazy fucking high, right? They were like, it was like 1600 or some shit, right? And you don't want it that high, or else you're going to start, having too much estrogen. So I was like, fuck, I have to like cut this down and shit, right? But that's because Male Excel, who were supposed to be nurse practitioners, weren't making sure that my blood levels were good. They were just asking me, how do I feel? That's bullshit. That's not even a good barometer, right? And they're supposed to be professionals. So I'm like, I don't know. That kind of stuff ticks me off, right? So, and then also just the price of it. Okay. A lot of insurance companies aren't going to pay for TRT. They're just not. A lot of them won't. Like, some do. Like, there's some guys in the Wolfpack where I believe their insurance covers it. And so, they get it from the pharmacy, once a month or once every couple months, and insurance covers it, right? But a lot of people's insurance won't cover it unless you're, a trans person and you're trying to transition from a female to a male, then their insurance will cover it because of fucking, liberalism. But if you're a guy who's got low testosterone, they won't cover it. So you got to pay for this shit out of pocket. And a company like Male Excel, that cost me a shitload of money, right? It cost me $80 a month just to be a member. And then every 2 months, they were charging me $300 to renew the prescription. And I'm like, that's outrageous, right? That's outrageous out of pocket cost. And so I was just like, I had some friends that happened to know where to source black market. And I was like, okay, fine, fuck it. I'm going to go to black market. And I can get a whole year's supply for that $300 that they were charging me like every 2 months. So I'm like, why would I do this? So I'm not recommending it. Not recommending it, but it is an option. Okay. It's way less expensive, but you're going to have to be responsible and do your own bro testing. You know what I mean? And when I say bro testing, that's essentially what doctors would be doing anyway. So nurse chick, right? Nurse chick is working towards her nurse practitioner. She's going to nurse practitioner school. She's college, right? She's going to college to become a nurse practitioner. And literally, she's going to be a provider that's going to be writing prescriptions and stuff like that. And she's like, this is literally what a doctor would do, right? They will give you a prescription. They have a chart on dosages. Okay, let's start here. And boom, take it for a month or two. And then let's come back for blood tests to see where we're at. And then we'll adjust, right? So you can do that yourself, technically, not legally, but if you go black market, you could do that yourself and then get your blood labs like every couple months. And then you can fucking use ChatGPT to calculate the dosages, right? You could say, okay, this is where my blood level is. This is the dosage I'm taking. Like, what would be the if I want to bring my level down to this much or bring my level up to this much, like what would the change be in dosage? And fucking ChatGPT will actually calculate that shit. Okay. Do I recommend that? Not officially. And this is not medical advice, but it is an option. I'm just saying people do this. All right, guys. I hope you guys got some value out of this. I hope you guys, gave you something to think about at least. That's all I got though. So tune into the podcast on Wednesday. Wednesday is Christmas Eve, but I will be live. I am going to go through my favorite Royce maxims. Okay. If you guys are familiar with Royce, Royce used to have a blog called Chateau Artiste. And he wrote all these really interesting articles back in the day. He's one of the original like 3 R's of the manosphere, right? You have Rollo, Roosh, and Royce. And Royce got doxxed. And so he used to have a blog called Royce in DC. And when he got doxxed, he changed his blog name to Chateau Artiste, but it's the same guy. And he used to write these really interesting articles on game and stuff. And he would always put these maxims in there, right? Like maxim number 55 or whatever. Well, if you ever buy the book, Artiste on Game, which I have, and I read it, it's just a compilation of all of his blog articles. At the end of that, it's just a list of all of his maxims. And the funny thing is about it is that he never really properly ordered his maxims by number. So there's like 5 maxim number 55, right? He's like maxim number 55, right? He would just throw out a number but a lot of those maxims were pretty profound. So I went through and I grabbed the top 20 of my favorite Royce maxims. So on Wednesday, we're going to go through some red pill Royce maxims. It should be fun. So tune into that. But that's all I got, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit those notifications. I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Other than that, we'll see you next time.
This has been the Come On Man podcast. Now, go out and get it.